Starfleet Academy, Cadet Kirk, Chapter 3. I'm not allowed to turn around, Cadet Kirk said. Not unless there's an emergency. This is an emergency, Leonard McCoy insisted. I'm putting my life in the hands of another student who's never driven beyond interplanetary space lanes. Never soloed, the cadet corrected. I can do it. I earned this, remember? You earned what? Something other than being Richard Daystrom chauffeur? I also earned the privilege of having a special solo. That usually means going beyond the Agira Basin. This will complete my qualification for my warp rating. And I'm your first passenger? Lucky me. I'm a certified near-space pilot, sublight rating. I'm licensed for Earth transports and interplanetary crossings. This voyage will qualify me for my FOS warp rating. FOS? First open space. How long will it take us to get to Colony Cambria? We should arrive in about 3.5 days. 3.5? I heard the trip would take less than 2 days. It would if we went straight there, but first I have to drop off a satellite at the Smith-McBride asteroid station for a hydrographic survey. Then we have to pass by a Federation automated outpost and pick up its power system numbers. How long will that take? No time at all. We're not stopping. We're just swerving by the area and picking up the numbers by remote. Automated stations broadcast them every hour. After that, we stop at the tank barge Polly Herman to fuel up. Then I have to inspect a convoy of cattle ships. Paddle ships? Cattle ships. Ships that transport livestock to colonies. I have to inspect the pens, conditions of the animals, the safety and sanitation systems, and make sure everything's up to Starfleet code for live animal transport. We have to be around a herd of cows? Cows, pigs, chickens, sheep, horses, and llamas, the cadet said. The ships are just called cattle ships out of tradition. It actually means any ship rigged for livestock. Doesn't sound like very dignified duty for a crisp young pre-ranker like yourself. Dignity doesn't matter. Following orders does. The cadet was still mad, McCoy could tell, and in a way he understood. The young man had struggled to get good grades, earned his chance to make a name for himself as Richard Daystrom's pilot and aide. All that was being left behind at ever-increasing speed. McCoy watched the grim, ruddy-faced boy. How old are you, Tiger? 19? Going on 18. My birthday's next month. You're only 17? McCoy blurted. Cadet Kirk scowled. You're not much older, sir. Older enough. Sitting back, McCoy fell silent and looked at the licensing tag on the Spitfire's bulkhead. Cadet James T. Kirk, Sub-L NSP, UFP Starfleet Academy, Authorization 405G. Those must be the ratings Cadet Kirk had just talked about. Sublight, near-space pilot. Ready for warp speed, the cadet said coldly, adjusting the controls before him. Obviously, he wasn't the type to waste time. Warp 0.5, 0.7, 0.85, the cadet droned, pressing the full warp enabler. Dotted with jewels of distant stars and nebulae, space blew into a wash of streaks. Crack! The speed of light. Warp 1, Cadet Kirk murmured. He stared at the forward screen, as if all this frightened him a little too. But he also seemed proud and glad to have somebody here to witness this. Holding his breath, McCoy shifted his eyes from the forward screen to the cadet, then back again, then to the cadet again. Any minute they'd melt or blow up or something. Any second, any time now. Warp 2, Cadet Kirk said. Warp speed. Going faster than the speed of light by actually bending the relationship between time and space. The whole idea sometimes struck him as impossible, and even though space travelers have been using warp speed for a long time, high speeds were always dangerous. Warp speed was dangerous because of the strange, almost magical science involved. Warping space in order to rush from place to place actually meant putting the ship in another dimension than the planets, stars, and nebulae it was passing. The slightest error could mean cramming into a star or ripping the body of the ship apart. Cruising at warp 2, Cadet Kirk said, his voice shuddering ever so slightly. He tapped a small panel at his left. Logging faster than light speed, time, and stardate. Congratulations, McCoy offered. Cadet Kirk shot him a sideways glare. Enjoy yourself, McCoy added quickly. He got up and left the cockpit. He went back into the main compartment, picked one of the 6 seats, settled into it, and put his feet up. Maybe if he took a nap, the trip would seem shorter. Settled in his own lounge, Ensign Spock was deep inside some kind of science manual. The dark-eyed Vulcan offered him only one quick glance and ignored him. McCoy thought about snaring the other ensign into a conversation so he could pick at the Vulcan and tease him a little. That was real fun. But 3.5 days. He'd better save the teasing. He might need it later to break the boredom. Maybe there were some things to read around here. He leaned and opened a bosun's locker where old magazines and newsletters were sometimes dumped for passengers to leaf through. The locker was full, but with books. Real books, not just computer tapes. Victory at Axanar by Garth of Izar, Captain Starfleet. Celestial Navigation by Wendy Lesnick. Computer Guidance in Small Craft by Horacio Geidel. Salvage Law by Michael Riley. The Alexandria Spaceport Foundation Seafarers and Spacefarers Dictionary. Space Lane Rules of the Road. Maritime Law in the Age of Steam. Beside it was the same book, only for the Age of Sail. "Junior," McCoy called. "You studying to be a space lawyer?" "Me? No, sir. Just want to drive ships." "What have you got all these dusty books for, then?" "Some of them are antiques. 2 are first editions from the 1800s. McCoy shrugged and closed the bosun's locker. He settled deeply into the curved lounge, dimmed the reading light at his side, and closed his eyes. In moments, the quiet hum of the Spitfire's warp engines wrapped him like a blanket. He took a deep breath and tried not to think about how fast they were going. He felt himself falling asleep. As his brain grew foggy, he started thinking about diseases of the human upper respiratory system in alien atmospheres. That was more than enough to carry him to sleep. His last thought as he drifted off to sleep was about how nice it might be to drowse away a few days without any pressure. "Zodiac Spitfire on Starfleet Emergency Channel 91 to Atlantis Outpost. State your intentions." McCoy's eyes shot open. Who was that? What was wrong? Why was someone yelling? An alarm of some kind was jangling in the cockpit, and a red light flashed, casting a bloody glow across the salon. Boom! A blunt force hit the Spitfire, echoing inside its metal bulkheads. The deck tilted to the right, and McCoy went spilling out of his lounge onto the deck carpet. "What?" he blurted. Somehow he got to his knees. A pair of legs dodged past him. Spock. The Vulcan pulled himself forward against the tilted deck and crawled into the passenger seat in the cockpit. "What is it, Cadet?" he asked. For a moment, Cadet Kirk pounded at his controls, trying to force the little ship to do what he wanted. But nothing changed. The alert jangle kept ringing, and the ship kept bucking against a force that grabbed it. "B-64 automated outpost at Atlantis Station. It's throwing a tractor beam on us. We're being pulled off course." Starfleet Academy, Cadet Kirk, Chapter 4. "No doubt about it. That's a full-power tractor beam." Cadet Kirk spat the words furiously. Before them, the spacescape tumbled drunkenly. Ensign Spock scoured the readouts. "The engines are buckling," he called out. "I suggest you drop to sublight." "Sublight, aye," the cadet answered. As he played the helm, the Spitfire suddenly fell out of warp speed and seemed almost to stand still in space. In fact, they were still moving very fast, but not in the right direction, and there was no point going warp speed to the wrong place. "Atlantis Outpost," the cadet tried again. "Respond." But this time Ensign Spock put his own hand on the communications console and stopped the broadcast. "No signals." As the other two stared at him, Spock scowled at the console. "Atlantis Outpost is completely automated. There is no tractor beam there, and no one to turn it on if there were one. Someone is doing this deliberately. We should not be contacting them until we know what's happening." His voice was overlaid by the whooping alarm and the flashing of almost half the lights on the helm control board. Together, he and Cadet Kirk battled the force gripping the Spitfire. McCoy watched from between the two seats. "Why would an automated outpost be pulling us off course?" he asked. "It can't be," Cadet Kirk answered. "Somebody must have installed a tractor device on the station." Wide-eyed, McCoy shook his head. "But why? I've seen outposts like that. They're just hunks of equipment, usually doing geological surveys and running wells and mines." The Vulcan palmed the helm. "We're definitely being pulled off course by a beam from the Atlantis station." "Can we overcome its pull?" McCoy asked. Neither Cadet Kirk nor Ensign Spock answered. Clearly, they were fighting to do just that, but the whine of the helm and engines said they were failing. "Can't we pull in the other direction?" McCoy persisted. "Not if the tractor beam has more power than our ship's thrust," Spock said. "We could burn out our engines in minutes." "I'd rather fight it," Cadet Kirk said. The Vulcan twisted to face him. That makes no sense. I just explained. You'd be right if this ship were over 3,000 metric tons, but I think we've got enough thrust to fight the beam. McCoy looked at him. You think? Spock pointed at the sensor grid. Cadet, the tractor beam is the old magnetic design, originally used for transfer of large cargoes. According to the energy readings, this tractor beam is capable of not only holding this vessel, but breaking it in two. There's got to be a way to fight it, the cadet insisted. To keep from bumping his head again, McCoy lowered himself to one knee. Is there a problem with your hearing? Cadet Kirk frowned at the console before him. Sir, we've got to contact whoever's doing this and get them to break that beam. As the cadet reached for the communications panel, Ensign Spock pushed his arm back. Not yet, the Vulcan told him. Now the boy's flashing hazel eyes came up sharply. Are you saying we should go down silent? We don't know if there's anybody controlling the beam. We could be dragged into the planet's surface at full speed. I know that. We have to take the risk. Sir, there are certain steps we're supposed to take with any deviation in our flight plan. There are no exceptions. This is my warp solo, and I have to do it right. No contact. The Vulcan's answer was crisp and blunt. Cadet Kirk started to sweat. Sir, there are rules for this situation. There are rules for every situation. Spock's lively eyes flickered like electricity. That would be quite illogical, Cadet. We should hold off any contact until we find out who is doing this to us and why. Leaning between them, McCoy asked, You smell a trap? Spock glanced at him as he powered down the impulse engines to avoid overload. None of us is of any particular value. Logically, there has to be a better reason for pulling us off course. What reason? Cadet Kirk asked. Remember, Spock said, the Spitfire was supposed to have another passenger on board. The cadet stared at him. Dr. Daystrom. If the persons controlling the beam think they are getting Daystrom, we should let them believe that as long as possible. But, sir, Cadet Kirk argued, that isn't the correct procedure for an emergency. If this is a malfunction of the station, then Dr. Daystrom's transport could be in the same kind of danger when it comes past here later. We should find out who these people are so we know what to do. Keeping very calm, but obviously surprised by the strange turn of events, Spock fought to think around what was happening to them. We should attempt a safe landing on the outpost, find out what is occurring, secure the area, then take appropriate action. But that isn't the right order of procedure. The Vulcan raised a brow. I outrank you. But the Spitfire is signed out to me, the cadet countered. I'm the only one authorized to pilot her, sir. Signing out a vehicle does not countermand seniority of rank. But it makes me in charge of the vehicle. But not what happens to the vehicle outside of your flight plan, Spock pointed out calmly. This is the most logical course of action. We will make no contact yet. Cadet Kirk glared and scowled and burned, but there was no changing the Vulcan's mind. A choice had been made by the ranking officer, and that was a course they would follow. Sir, he said then, I suggest we attempt a mayday at least. We should send out some kind of warning about this, in case Dr. Daystrom's shuttle comes by and gets caught too. A distress call? Spock paused, weighing the ups and downs of that. McCoy watched as Spock decided what to do. Then the Vulcan said, Proceed. The cadet concentrated on deploying the distress call. McCoy watched as he tapped in time, location, identity, and pushed a Mayday automatic broadcast. It's not getting out, the cadet gasped. Something's blocking the broadcast. Ensign Spock frowned over the readouts. The tractor beam is scrambling the signal. It must have a very high electromagnetic charge. Cancel the Mayday before we have a burnout. Frustrated, Cadet Kirk clicked off his broadcast. The warp shuttle bucked and tipped this way and that, forcing McCoy to hold on tightly to the cockpit seats. He didn't want to get thrown sideways into a bulkhead and end up with a skull injury. Before them on the screen now, they saw the small green and brown planet where Atlantic Outpost had been raised a few years ago. The planet appeared to be wagging back and forth, turning and wobbling like a ball in a bathtub, but in fact the Spitfire was doing the wagging and wobbling. The hull's taking strain, Cadet Kirk read off as he watched the numbers on the helm. We're losing thrust, too. Cut thrust to minimum, Spock said. Let them pull us in. I'd rather not do that, sir. We already had this discussion, Cadet. I know, but it doesn't make sense to let kidnappers have their way on everything. On what specifically? I don't think we ought to let them pull us to wherever they want us. I mean, why should we let them say what happens at every step? McCoy squeezed between them again. You have some better idea? Yes. I think we should crash land.